Welcome everyone to tonight's intention setting call for the Fairness Code. This code is very, very important when it comes to mental health. Very important code for mental health because it creates a lot of internal negative energy when we don't work on the Fairness Code. And we're going to discover just how important this code is over the next month. And we're also going to discover why people have a lot of trouble cultivating this fairness in their lives. We're going to discover the unhealed schemas that block us from having a genuine sense of fairness and equanimity and balance in life. We're going to discover all of that. It's going to be a very empowering month for you. But I will say that there can be a lot of heaviness connected to this code. This is a hard one to shift because for a lot of us, there has been unfairness in our lives. There has been injustices that have happened in our lives where we haven't received the apology or the recognition of being treated badly or blamed for something that wasn't our fault. It can be a really difficult one to shift. Okay, but we're going to set an intention on this call to activate the Fairness Code. Welcome, Danielle. Lovely to see you from cold Canberra. We're going to set an intention to activate fairness, which is connected to this feeling of equanimity. So this feeling of equanimity is this sense that life is pretty good to me. Life is good and life is pretty good for me and to me. As in, yes, there's been some suffering that I've experienced and there's been suffering that a lot of people have experienced. And on the flip side of that, some people have not received the consequences or the punishment that they deserve for doing some bad things. And despite the unfairness in life, the inherent unfairness in life, I am going to do my best to restore a sense of justice and balance in life to the degree that it's in my control. Because we all have this internal sense of right and wrong. Yeah. We do all have this sense of what's right, what's wrong, what's moral, all of that. And but also we're also imperfect. So sometimes we don't act in the right way. Sometimes we do bad things to other people. So it's a real conflict. So, okay, well, do we punish ourselves when we do the bad thing because we're busy punishing other people? When do we give forgiveness to other people? When do we give forgiveness to ourselves? It's very gray. It's a very gray area, isn't it? Because in an ideal world, good people would be rewarded for their good deeds all of the time, and bad people would be punished for their bad deeds all of the time. And then that would be perfectly fair and balanced. You know, like the scales, like the lawyers have the scales, that's their logo. And it would be all perfect. And what we're going to discover is that a lot of our triggers and what triggers our sense of injustice often takes us back to a period in our life where we were quite black and white in our thinking. Welcome, Maria. Hello, and welcome, Deb. Yes, so we get triggered and it takes us back to a period in childhood, especially around the age of 7 and 8, when we're developing that sense of justice and fairness. It's like, why should she get the bigger piece of cake when I finished my homework first? It's not fair. And yet it happens. These bad things happen and these injustices happen. And it never quite gets resolved. I mean, in a family where more needs are getting met, I suppose what will happen is that the parent or the carer might explain that, well, yes, I can see how that is unfair because you did finish your homework first. But in some situations, I'm going to make a decision that isn't perfectly balanced, and I'm going to do my best to keep that in mind and maybe balance it out in another way. I mean, what a beautiful explanation would that be? But a lot of the times we've grown up in households where maybe a parent or caregiver didn't have that kind of emotional awareness or emotional intelligence. And when they're challenged by the child who has that real sense of injustice, which is rightly so, the parent might go into blaming or scapegoating or say, well, now you're just being unkind because don't you realize how hard I'm working? So now that child who originally sensed the injustice is now being scapegoated or blamed when they were just challenging the natural, course of justice, and rightly so. So you can see how maybe these two schemas that block fairness are self-sacrifice and punitiveness. Because say if that 7-8-year-old child learns that, okay, well, the way that I can restore justice is to just be really helpful and do lots of things for other people and be good all of the time and be considerate all of the time and be helpful. And then I will get the recognition or the acknowledgement that I'm a good person. Self-sacrifice schema right there. So they have this sense that I just need to do and give and take care of other people. And then they will recognize that and they'll start to see me as the good person that I am. And that will restore my sense of justice. I just need to prove what a good person I am, what a moral person I am. So there's the self-sacrifice schema. And then the punitiveness schema is developed when the child sees that, okay, if there's a problem or something stressful in life, there's always someone to blame. It's always someone's fault. Just need to figure out whose fault it is. That's where the punitiveness schema comes from, is this idea that when there's stress in the household or one parent is unhappy or something like that, it must be someone's fault, because that's the message that they're getting. Because say if mum or dad is very stressed at work, they come home and then the child spills some food on the floor, instead of the parent processing their stress and frustration that's coming from another place, they might take it out on the child who's spilled the food on the floor and go, my life would be so much easier if you didn't create all this mess. So what's going on here? Now a child is being punished for just an everyday thing, something that should be forgiven. It's just an error. It's just a mistake. It's just some mess. That's normal thing for people to do in life. It's normal for the parent to do in life, is to spill their coffee at work. Shouldn't we be using just some compassion and understanding and forgiveness in this situation? Yes, we should. But if the message is every single thing that goes wrong in life, we need to figure out who's to blame, who's at fault, and they get punished. So now that child, that 7-8-year-old child is working out that, okay, when bad things happen, it's always someone's fault. We just have to figure out who caused it. So everything in life becomes very linear, cause and effect. If there's problem X, then we need to figure out what the cause is. See how linear that is? Whereas we know that sometimes bad things happen randomly. That's part of the chaotic nature of life, is that no matter how much good you do in life, some bad things might happen to you. You know, I'm talking with someone at the moment who's getting really screwed over in a work situation. That person has not done anything wrong, but that's where your mind goes to, oh, what did I do wrong? I should have spotted this. So we're always looking at where to point the finger. So the healing for the punitiveness schema is self-compassion first, and then we can genuinely be compassionate with other people. We can genuinely forgive other people for their errors when we forgive ourselves for the same thing. Do you see how that's fairness? It's like, well, I'm not going to forgive you for spilling that milk on the floor when I wouldn't even forgive myself. Like, but if I see that as, no, that's no one's fault, we don't need to fault find here, then we can be very forgiving of normal human errors. And the healing pathway for the self-sacrifice schema is reciprocity. So this is now Rachel's favorite word, reciprocity. All of my relationships need to be built on reciprocity. It needs to be this giving and take, giving and receiving. You know, yes, I might help you with your university assignment, and you give me something back in the form of appreciation and thanks and recognition and acknowledgement. And for me, that feels fair. That's all I ask. Yeah. But for some people in life, they'll give, and they're not receiving back that acknowledgement or appreciation. And they think, I just need to keep giving until they see what a good person I am. Okay. All right, so let's get started on writing an intention for ourselves. So if you all have either a piece of pen and paper or just the notes application on your laptop or on your phone, somewhere where you can write something down. Or even if you're just typing it into something on your computer that you can refer back to. All righty. Okay, so let's start off general with the fairness code. So for me, when I was starting out doing this work, it might have been something like, I want to cultivate a sense of fairness and balance in my life. Or I want to cultivate a sense of equanimity and feel like my life is pretty fair. Other words that you could use the word intention. My intention is to cultivate a sense of healthy fairness and justice in my life. And I like that word healthy because it sort of refers to the idea that, well, healthy fairness, there's a little bit of flexibility in that. Yeah. It's not always 50-50. Life's not always 50-50. Like in an intimate relationship, for example, my partner cooks every night and I never, ever cook. And then he cleans up the dishes. Right? Winning. And if he didn't have a sense of fairness, he might be like, this isn't fair. I have to cook every night and clean up. But he has a sense that, well, I help in other ways, like I'm very attentive and attuned to his emotions and feelings. So I bring that to the relationship. I bring more intimacy and depth, into the more emotional relating realm. So he might feel like, well, I have a pretty good deal. So it's not 50-50. It's not like I do this one thing and you've got to do that thing back for me, because not everyone has the same gifts. But how will we know if it feels fair? Is because there's no resentment. Okay, that is the key giveaway feeling. If you feel resentful towards somebody or a situation, then there isn't that genuine reciprocity there. Okay? Does that make sense? If you're feeling like, this isn't right, this isn't fair, why should I have to keep doing this? Then that is suggesting some resentment there. And that's highlighting that there's something unfair, imbalanced in this relationship that we might want to unpack this month. Okay. So yes, so go ahead and write down your overall general intention for the fairness code. So I want to invite more fairness and balance into my life. I want to cultivate a sense of equanimity in life. I want to have the feeling like life is pretty good and fair and balanced, and I have power. Write down whatever feels like it captures that overall essence of fairness. I'll just do that now. Okay, so as you're just writing that down, and then the second part of our intention is where we get a little bit more specific, depending on what schema you can identify might be blocking your sense of fairness. So for example, if you have the punitiveness schema, then you might be quite black and white and rigid when it comes to right and wrong. And if you're doing that to other people, then there's a good chance that you're doing that to yourself as well. If you're like, they just ran a red light. Okay. They just, that person's speeding in the traffic, or they just ran a red light. They're so bad. Because maybe you do things perfectly when it comes to driving rules. You're like, they're a bad citizen. How, and maybe even though you're perfect when it comes to driving, you might do something else that's not exactly by the rules. And so then you might be real, or maybe you were a bit impatient with your child. You know what I mean? You're a bit impatient with your child, and you lost your temper with your child. Then you could be speaking to yourself in the same way that you're speaking about that person who ran the red light. You're like, I'm such a terrible parent. A good mum wouldn't ever lose her temper. So then you're categorizing people, good and bad. And there's not enough self-compassion. Danielle said, you are describing my session with a client this afternoon. Yes, quite a common theme is punitiveness and punishment. And it doesn't, sometimes we think about the punitiveness schema, we think about serious abuse, but really it happens across the board. This blaming, scapegoating, judging, they're bad, etc. So if your specific intention was to start to heal the punitiveness schema, it might sound something like, and I'm willing to start being more forgiving towards myself for the normal mistakes that humans make, and also forgiving of others for the normal mistakes that other people make. Danielle said, I didn't realize how strong the punitiveness schema was in the client until I looked at the fairness code. Yes, because we typically look for that real strong, intense, clients with a borderline presentation often have a very strong punitiveness schema, and it's very obvious, but it's in so many people. This scolding. Yeah, so the specific intention for healing the punitiveness schema might involve something like that. I'm willing to be more compassionate and forgiving to myself, and see myself as human, and therefore I can see others as human, making errors. Okay. And if it's self-sacrifice, then the specific intention might sound like, and I'm ready to start cultivating more reciprocity in my relationships with other people. I'm ready to start cultivating more give and take with others. So it feels fair and balanced, and I don't feel like I'm giving more than I'm receiving, because I don't want to build up resentment. We don't want resentment in our bodies. I had a lot of resentment in my first marriage, and I knew that it was a very toxic energy, and I didn't want to bring it to my current relationship. So I'm very conscious of any times I feel resentful towards my partner. I'm like, oh, that's a massive red flag goes off for me. I'm starting to feel resentful that he's not being as attentive or present. I need to address it. And, so that there can be a little bit more reciprocity, and he can at least understand, what's going on for me and meet me halfway, instead of keeping it to myself. That would be the less healthy thing to do, is to keep my feelings to myself and just hope that he realizes how I'm feeling. But then the resentment just builds when he doesn't spot the pattern and do something different. So I will go out of my way to make sure that resentment does not build up in my relationship with him, because I also feel like it can get to a point of no return, where if people tolerate this lack of balance, unfair treatment in their relationships for long enough and it's not addressed, I really feel like you can get to a point where it's just like there's too much contempt. Yeah, all that Gottman stuff. Contempt. One of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Hard to come back from. Yeah, which is why I'm like, okay, there needs to be give and take in all of my relationships, other than with my children, where there's no balance. There's no fairness. It's one way, and it should be, I think. Well, until they reach a certain age where you're like, no, you're an adult now. You can start giving me the respect, or even like when they're younger. Say, well, you're 12 years old. I feel like a 12-year-old can at least understand what respect means. So no, I'm not going to take you to your favorite restaurant when you've spoken to me like that. That's fair. But that you won't get that same level of acknowledgement from your children that might be warranted. But with other adults in your life, with intimate partners, with adult friends, with colleagues, with bosses, peers, I think you should expect reciprocity, which is there's this sort of give and take. There's this, they benefit in some ways from your behaviors. You benefit from what they do, that 2 people kind of come to the party. Okay. Yes, so then that would be the specific intention is, and I'm willing to start cultivating more reciprocity, more give and receive. in all of my adult relationships. Okay. Write down whatever yours is. And then we're going to work through it together. Okay, so please feel free to take yourself off mute now, because before I pressed the mute all button, which muted everyone, but I can't unmute everyone at the same time. Mute and let me know what this intention for the fairness code has brought up for you. I mean, we've got a whole month and we'll be doing coaching on it. But if you can identify that there's definitely one of those schemas that you can see is blocking your sense of healthy justice and healthy fairness, that's what we're looking for, is this sense of realistic. We're realistic about our relationship with fairness and justice. We're like, okay, there's not perfect justice and fairness in life, but I have some power to create some fairness and balance in my life. And I need to at least start there. And I need to at least look at where there might be a bit of imbalance, at least in my close, immediate circle, right? Oh, just a side note, I used to do work for like work cover. There's no fairness code in in any of those clients because, you know, there's been injustices in their workplace. And some of the clients certainly want to heal and they don't want to stay stuck in that place. And then other clients that I would work with, they actually don't want to, for example, they don't want to move on from that workplace and resign. They would rather stay stuck in this pattern because of the injustice of what happened to them, but it's not healthy for them. So you can see how there's a lot of heaviness before activating this code. That little girl inside that's sort of stamping her feet saying, that's not fair. We want to listen to her, you know, that 8-year-old part of us that's saying, that's not fair, because there's some truth to it. You know, like young children have a good sense of justice and fairness in life, even though they're not experienced in life. They have a sense of what feels right and what feels wrong. So we want to listen to that part of us and go, you're right, this doesn't feel fair, but then it's the healthy adult part of you that can help engage in a dialogue about this. And, well, what are we going to do? Are we going to accept the injustice here? Are we going to pick our battles and just go, oh, well, you know, not everything is fair? Or are we going to put a boundary in place? Are we going to overlook this? Or are we going to assert ourselves? All you need to focus on right now this week is the intention that you've written. I know it sounds boring, but just read over that once a day. Just read over your intention. There's so much power in it, because then your mind starts focusing on what your intention is, and then you start behaving in ways that would be in alignment with that intention. So there's just so much power just in that intention. Then next week when we catch up on the group call, then what you can bring to it is all the places where you're getting tripped up, or the relationships in your life that you feel are not balanced, or the things that you might be being overly harsh and punitive towards yourself over, that you would be more forgiving in other people about.